Good morning. Everyone's curious about what I might have got for Christmas. Well, I can tell you what we all got. We got the flu. Yeah, fun and games. 2.5, 3 days in bed. Achy shaky. Cold. Sweating. Yeah, the usual nonsense. But before I tell you what I got for Christmas, let me do some housekeeping tasks of what I've been doing up here. So I came up in December. I had a holiday, so I had a break from it. Came up in December on a windy day, and I was feeling round all over the place for the drafts because this insulation isn't perfect. So I've been sealing the cracks, including around the window frame here, and I've shut out a lot of drafts. Now, how hot is it up here, or how cold is it up here? Well, when you first open up, it's certainly not the same temperature as the house. But after about half an hour of that loft hatch being open, the heat comes up and it warms up nicely, especially as I'm moving around doing things. So what this insulation is doing, it's not perfect because, as I say, I had some drafts, is it's taken the bottom end of the temperature range out of play. Usually when I come up here in winter, if it's 2 degrees outside, it's 2 degrees inside, and it is pretty damn cold. The other thing I've been doing is repainting all the white stuff, well, above board height, and I've repainted the fronts of the board, shall we say. Let me show you. So I've done my ceiling round the window and a few bits in the top here where the insulation was never going to be perfect, but there was hardly any drafts or air movement anyway. I've painted the front of the boards and I've painted the uprights, except for the bits going down to the floor because I couldn't be bothered to move all my junk around. But one other change was this little tunnel's gone. Now, when the single track was all going to be raised, that kind of like made sense. But as soon as I put the single track down, it just didn't make any sense anymore. It didn't look right. It wasn't right. So I've got rid of it. However, by pulling some track pins and moving this lot around, I could create a hill here and have a shortish tunnel. I'd get rid of the back seam so I'd have access from the rear in case anything went wrong. But I wouldn't be missing out on much back seam. It's not very tall there because of the loft hatch. Yeah, it's all painted. We're ready to move on. Now there's one more change that I had to make. This is my 12 volt power supply, my transformer. Plugs in the mains. And this was my small handheld controller with a long lead. It will allow you to move around a little bit. Will certainly get you a little bit further down the board if you needed to, while still having the controller in your hands. For whatever reason, that would not work with some of my older locomotives. Either they would crawl or they wouldn't go at all. The output on this is only I think it's 9 volts instead of the full 12, so I don't know if that had something to do with it, but for whatever reason some locomotives would not work with that controller. So I've dug out an old Graham Farish controller and everything's fine. Now you want to know what I got for Christmas. Well, about time I told you, isn't it? Well, this is going to be really exciting. Static grass. Static grass and a different flavour of static grass. These all come off eBay. I I'm going to try and read this for you. www.pgstudio.co.uk. So it's not one of the main brands, and because it's not one of the main brands, it's cheaper. There's more. Now, if you recall at the show I went to, one of the things I bought myself for Christmas, basically gave it to the wife and said, wrap that up for me, was a 3-pack of weathered trucks. These cost me, well, it says £25.40. Hereford Model Centre. They had a shop at the show. So these are going to come out now that I've got them back. What am I going to pull them with? That's the question. Do you remember the prairie tank? The one that the valve gear had locked up, bent and broken. Well, I set about repairing it in order to sell it. And as soon as I touched the valve gear, those 2 little pins that the valve gear slides in, one of them fatigued off. So however old this thing is, 35 years, 40 years, whatever it is, I just don't know. It finally said, I've had enough of being bent out of shape. And so we've got one side of the Loco with valve gear, and one side without. So my plan to sell this has gone down the toilet. But this is a layout that goes round in a circle. So all I've got to do is to run this locomotive with that side facing the audience, myself. So why don't we do that? Well, the prairie looks okay from this side. Here's the 3 new trucks, weathered, got some extra bits added. They look pretty decent. There's the truck I got from being a member of the Backman Society, or Owners Club. Let's give it a go. Now, it hasn't been running a little while, so it starts off a little bit jerky, a little bit hesitant, but soon gets underway. As I say, if you run this side towards the audience, nobody knows that the other side is broken. Good job, really. Now, I do have a job to do, and that is to replace the couplings, because the old couplings on this prairie, there you go, see what I mean? So we'll go pick it up and we'll just go in reverse for a little bit. Yeah, I do like those trucks. I wish they still did those truck packs, especially at that price. Yeah, so this will be run on the single track. It won't be on the main line. Well, is that it? Not quite. There is one other item that I picked out second hand out of Cheltenham Model Centre. And it's in these 3 boxes. 3 boxes. It says green 3-car DMU Tomix chassis. Whatever a Tomix chassis is. It's grey farish, but obviously the driven element of this has been replaced. Now, this did give me some bother. And the reason it gave me some bother is because it had one of these things inside it. Digitrax. Would I be right in saying that this is one of the very earliest digital control chips? It is no more. Right, so I've got it out. It's on the track. Now, I know there'll be people in my comments saying, "Oh, Simon, now you're going to have to buy this diesel and that diesel and the other diesel." And no, this is the last one. And it's going to stay the last one. Now, it's an old model. It's pretty crude. It's missing a buffer, so that's a job to repair. But it runs okay. It looks okay. Of course, I can run it as a 2-car DMU if I want. Both the Prairie and this will be going on the single track in the future when I start assembling my trains, because that's another job to do. I've been collecting coaches for, well, years. I've been collecting quite a few recently, job lots off of eBay. What I don't know is if I've got enough coaches yet, or too many coaches. Because the whole purpose of all these sidings behind me is to store whole trains on the layout, rather than, oh, I want to change something. I need to get all this off the layout and back into its boxes and get something else on the layout out of its boxes. So they're all going to get stored out here. This may be stored as a 3-car unit, or it may be stored as a 2. I haven't made up my mind yet. Let's see the little devil run, shall we? I'll say cheerio and Happy New Year, and hopefully this bloody flu goes and I can actually go and do what I want to do, which is carry on with construction. Ta-ra.
So this was bought as an option to run on the single track. It's not a great model. It doesn't have a very great deal of detail. The gaps between the carriages are outrageous. I'm not sure if there's a way of changing the couplings to bring them tighter together. There's a traction tyre on each of the driven front and rear bogies there of the lead driven unit, and it moves quite well, especially now that I've got that little chip out of it. I'll tell you what it did with that chip. It would go forward 9 inches, stop, come back an inch, and go forward 9 inches, stop, come back an inch. It was only after I'd cut the chip out that I thought, do you know what, you should have recorded that just for a laugh. At a reasonable speed, it's reasonably quiet. But when you turn the controller a few notches, it gets a bit louder. As you can see, it's very much a plain Jane. It's a very old model. You can see why at some point in the past the original Graham Farish chassis might have died and somebody replaced it. But this new chassis cannot go, and that isn't full speed yet. It's like a ballistic missile. Well, I'm still running it too quickly, even though I've turned it back a bit. I'll be running it slower than this when it's on the single line. No point having a long layout that you can circumnavigate in 5 seconds flat at full speed. The whole idea is to run it at a reasonable speed. But it climbs well. No complaints there about it climbing, but then those 2 coaches it's pulling weigh half a Jenny Wren. There's no weight to them at all. Yeah, I do need a scenic break somewhere on here. It's quite likely that there will be a hill at the top of the hill. It's a bit of an ugly duckling, I'll grant you. But it wasn't expensive. It's a keeper. But there won't be any others. I'm not switching to diesel. This is the last. Ta-ra.